Welcome to our noon streamers. You haven't missed much. We just kind of said our prayer together and are entering into our study today. I just asked the class, about the four 8th century prophets that we have discussed as we come to Isaiah. So you can right there in the chat section join in the conversation as well. So who is the four? Somebody said Micah. Okay, that's one. Hosea. Amos. And y'all got them all. Okay, so that's Micah, Amos, Hosea, and Isaiah. Okay, Jonah again is there, but he is very unique because again he's not prophesying to either the northern or the south. He is called to prophesy to Nineveh. So Amos, Micah, Hosea, and Isaiah. And so, again, we close these 8th century prophets with the prophet Isaiah. Now, as I said, Isaiah is a very unique book because, again, it is the first of the major prophets. So out of Hosea, Micah, and Amos, all of those are minor prophets, but Isaiah, being a part of the 8th century prophets, he is considered a major prophet. Can anybody tell me why Isaiah is considered a major prophet? Why would Isaiah be considered a major prophet? Well, simply, Isaiah would be considered a major prophet just because his book is so long, okay? That's the only thing. The only distinction between the major and the minor prophets in the Bible are the sizes of their books. It doesn't mean that he is any more significant than the other prophets. It's just that the book is so long. And the book of Isaiah is 66 chapters, okay? So that's a lot different than Amos and Hosea and Micah, okay? And so, again, he is the first of the major prophets of the Bible. Now, as we discussed last week, he is, again, during the 8th century, they have his time being around 740 BCE to 681 BCE, which is, again, one of the reasons why his book can be so confusing, because that is 59 years of prophecy, okay? Now, again, I shared with you all last week that he is prophesying at the same time as Micah. Him and Micah are contemporaries. And so there is some overlap, and we even discussed some of the chapters that are the exact same in the book of Micah as they are in the book of Isaiah. But here again, this large section of time when Isaiah is prophesying covers the three periods that we have discussed. So remember, after we get past the breakdowns from the period of the patriarchs, the period of the tribes, the period of the nations, and then they become the divided kingdom, I said that you can now break up the prophets in the pre-exilic period or pre-exile. All right, exile. Okay, so when they have been kicked out of their land, and then post-exilic or post-exile. Okay. Now, let's start with this confusion in Isaiah, because Isaiah, existing again during like I said, 740 to 681, it is suggested that these 66 chapters is not actually written by one person, all right? That the book of Isaiah is actually written by 3 different prophets, all right? But they're all captured in the book of Isaiah, all right? So you would have, this is how they break them down. You have, put it here, first Isaiah, second Isaiah, and then third Isaiah. Now, it is suggested That first Isaiah goes from chapters number 1 to 39. Okay? First Isaiah is chapter number 1 through 39. Second Isaiah goes from chapters 40, and I'm sorry this is so small, to 55. Okay? Second Isaiah is chapter 40 to 55. And then third Isaiah is chapters 56 to 66, the conclusion of the book. All right? So they say there are 3 different Isaiahs in the book of Isaiah, which again complicates the book a bit. Now, I wanted to do this breakdown because this is why Isaiah is so complicated, because while we break down most prophets according to the pre-exilic prophets, the ones that are prophesying pre-exile, the prophets who are prophesying while they're in exile, and the prophets who are prophesying after they come out of exile, Isaiah captures all 3 of those categories. All right, so first Isaiah rather, from chapter 1 through 39, is suggested to be Isaiah prophesying pre-exile. Okay, so chapters 1 through 39 is occurring pre-exile, before Jerusalem is kicked out of, before Jerusalem is destroyed, okay? And they're under Babylonian captivity. That 1 through 39 is pre-exile. Then it's suggested that chapters 40 through 55, second Isaiah, is an unnamed prophet who is prophesying during exile, okay? So if you're reading chapters 40 through 55 in the book of Isaiah, imagine that they are actually in exile, okay? And then the third one, which is chapters 56 to 66, is a collection of prophets. Again, this is what scholars suggest, a collection of prophets who are prophesying post-exile. So after they have actually come out of captivity. Now, again, you might wonder, well, why did they just put it all in one book? Like, why was it all of this confusion? Well, again, as scholars are doing a historical criticism of the text and they're beginning to look at their sources, they're realizing that there are some distinctions. And here is a couple of the distinctions that they're seeing as to why they figured that this is not one author who is writing all the books. The first one is the historical factor, right? So when you're reading Isaiah 40 through 55, if you read the language, it is already as if Jerusalem has already been destroyed, okay? And if we are in pre-exile, Jerusalem wouldn't have been destroyed yet. So if you're reading in there talking about Jerusalem already being destroyed and them already being in Babylonian captivity, it suggests that's not the same writer, right? Because if Isaiah is existing during the time before Jerusalem is destroyed, but you're reading verses in the Bible that's talking about Jerusalem being destroyed, then that's a different time. So they're separating that out. Likewise, if you're reading chapters 56 to 66, the history suggests that the people are already going back to Jerusalem. And they wouldn't have been going back to Jerusalem until post-exile. So if you're reading material that's suggesting that there are already people heading back to Jerusalem, that suggests that that's happening at a much later date. Okay, so when people are doing a historical criticism of the text and they're reading the names that are being listed, the cities that are being talked about, the journeys that people are taking, they can kind of put the time frame, like whether or not we're talking about pre-exilic, because that means Jerusalem will still be existing. If we're talking about exile, that means that they are under Babylonian captivity, or whether or not we're talking about post-exile, which means they are already heading back to Jerusalem after being delivered from Babylonian captivity. So that's one of the reasons why they suggest that these have to be at least written at 3 different times, if not 3 different authors, okay? At least written at 3 different times. The second thing that causes them to suggest that these are 3 different writers is anonymity, okay? So if you're reading Isaiah 1 through 39, these chapters actually mention the name Isaiah. But after chapter 39, the name Isaiah is never mentioned again. Okay, so that would be a huge change in his writing style. Like if he's writing and he's used to putting his name while he writes, and then in the chapters after 39, he doesn't mention his name anymore, that either suggests he just completely changed his writing style, which is rare, because, you know, once you write, you've been signing your name the same way as long as you've been practicing in middle school. Once you get something, you usually stick with it. But the fact that it has changed suggests, well, maybe they're different writers, because if he was mentioning himself from 1 to 39 and he doesn't mention himself anymore after 39, then maybe that means that these are different writers. Okay, so anonymity, the fact that he no longer mentions his name when he once did, suggests that maybe these are different writers. And then the last thing that suggests that this might be different writers, one, we got the history, so you can kind of tell the different time periods. Two, he stops using his name after chapter 39. And the third one is he changes his style of writing after chapter 40. So there are certain key phrases and words that Isaiah uses from 1 to 39 that are no longer being used after 40, okay? And so when they're paying attention to that, you know, this is how they determine authors, because every author has a signature, and that signature is through the language that they use, okay? And when that language changes, when these phrases are no longer being used, they're suggesting, that this might indeed be a different author, okay? So, as a result, the book can be a little bit confusing because, again, it's all under one book of Isaiah, but they are talking about different time periods. They're using different language, and only 1 through 39 is using Isaiah's name, okay? But there is a harmony through the book, okay? And so what I want to do to try to help us not be, or let me say this, so that is something that happened around 1755, okay? They say around 1755, biblical scholars started to utilize the three different Isaiahs, okay? As they were studying the text, they started to suggest there's a first Isaiah, a deuteral or second Isaiah, and a trito or third Isaiah. But more recently, there is a new kind of critique that says, as opposed to breaking up the book into three sections that is trying to determine three different authors, they break up the book into two sections, which is about the two different themes, okay? So new writers are saying Isaiah can be broken up from chapters 1 to 33, and then chapters 34 through 66, okay? So as opposed to breaking it down into three different parts, it's trying to say these are three different writers, they're saying, well, basically what we can do is separate the book into two parts, which is two different themes. And so 1 to 33 is a warning to Jerusalem about what would happen if they don't change, all right? Yeah. So this is like pre-exile, like, okay, these things could happen. If you're reading chapters 1 through 33, it's like a warning before judgment has been made and potential promises of subsequent restoration if Jerusalem and Judah is indeed destroyed, if they don't heed the warning. You're going to find that from 1 to 33. And then they say from 34 to 36 is after judgment has already taken place, okay? So they just break it up as before judgment and after judgment. So as opposed to trying to say, oh, these are three different writers because the name isn't mentioned and the different time frames are mentioned, they just break it up from themes to say 1 through 33 is before judgment is brought down on Jerusalem, and then from chapters 34 through 66 is after a judgment has taken place in Jerusalem, okay? So, but for our purpose today and in our study, if we're focusing on pre-exilic prophets, right, and we are still before the time where Jerusalem has been captured, I just want to focus on first Isaiah, okay? Now, when we get to the exilic prophets, we'll go back and look at 40 through 55, and then when we get to post-exile, we'll come back and look at 56 to 66, so that you all can kind of put it in its time frame, so you're not really confused about what's happening. So today, when I'm saying that there's a contemporary, Isaiah is a contemporary of Micah, I'm talking about this Isaiah, all right? The Isaiah that existed and is writing from chapters 1 through chapters 39. Was that helpful? Yeah. Does that kind of give us a little clarity? I know it's a confusing book now, but I'm trying our best to make sure we're all on the same page. All right, so when we think about the prophet Isaiah, again, he, being a contemporary of Micah, is dealing with the same stuff. And we've talked about that last week. What's some of the stuff that's happening? You have them relying on foreign alliances because they are afraid of Assyria coming and taking them over, and because of an emerging wealth, you're having the poor being taken advantage by the rich, okay? So this is the parameter in which Isaiah is prophesying. Now, I told you all last week that while Micah is focused on the marketplace, the farmers, prophesying on behalf of the streets, that Isaiah is more focused on the royal palace, okay? So what we're going to see him is he's more so going at the kings, okay? He's at the top of the government officials, going at them for their role in the coming judgment that Jerusalem will face. Now, let me try to clear some of this up so y'all can see this stick map that I created for us, because in the backdrop of the book of Isaiah, what is really important is what is known as the Syro-Ephraimite War, all right? The Syro-Ephraimite War. I might have spelled that wrong, but it's close enough. Y'all will be able to Google it and find it. All right. So you might ask, so Ephraim, all right? Ephraim is another name for the northern kingdom of Israel. Syro is a short word for Syria, okay? So this is the war, all right? And I talked about that several weeks ago, but we can kind of review it now. So you have Assyria, right, which is a major empire that is right next door to Syria, which is another major empire, which both sits on top of the northern kingdom, all right, of Israel, which capital city is Samaria, and the southern kingdom of Judah, which is Jerusalem, okay? So what is occurring is that in this war, the northern kingdom has made an alliance with Assyria, okay? So as Assyria has come in, and they're coming far down here, and they have now taken over the northern kingdom of Israel. Now, I told you all, Judah is getting shook. All right, Judah is afraid that they might be next. All right, so what they decide to do is to create an alliance with Syria. All right, to prevent Assyria from being able to come in and take them down. Now, these things are occurring through what is called a vassal treaty. Y'all remember I told y'all about that? A vassal treaty? It's basically the contract that foreign nations make with each other to say, this is what I'm going to get from you, and this is what you're going to receive in return. So, say, for instance, felon Donald Trump wanted to go into a vassal treaty with Ukraine, and he said, if you give us your minerals, we'll give you protection, all right? The document that would formalize that will be known as a vassal treaty. So the same thing is happening. So when the southern kingdom is making a vassal treaty with Syria, there are agreements. It's saying you're going to pay this much in taxes and give us this much in resources, and we in turn are going to protect you from Assyria coming in and taking you over, okay? So that is the backdrop that Isaiah is prophesying around, where you have the northern and southern kingdom of the northern kingdom of Israel, the southern kingdom of Judah, who already have a contract, right? They already have a covenant. Who's their covenant with? Yahweh, all right? Northern kingdom, southern kingdom, they have a covenant with Yahweh. God is to be their protector. And their devotion to him, in return, he takes care of them. But now that they're seeing these surrounding empires come around, they are no longer being loyal to the covenant that they have made with Yahweh. They are now engaging in additional covenants with these foreign empires, which God sees as a breach of contract. He said, no, you got a contract with me. You can't just be signing vassal treaties with these other nations. Like, we have an agreement, right? And so as a result, this is what the prophets are really pushing back against. As they're the mouthpieces of God, they're telling these kings, whether it was Amos and Hosea in the northern kingdom, or whether it's Micah and Isaiah in the southern kingdom, they are telling these kings, hey, y'all are getting ready to deal with God's wrath because you all are entering into these vassal treaties with these foreign nations. And as a result, God is saying y'all breaching contract. And if y'all do that, he's going to remove his protection. That's right. And when God removes God's protection, we know the northern kingdom falls. And then eventually, we're still in the pre-exilic period, but eventually the southern kingdom will fall as well. And that's because they have entered into these vassal treaties with these foreign kings and kingdoms, which again, God sees as a violation and a breach of the contract that they made with him. Okay? Yeah.
So I'm glad that you said it was pre-exilic, because I was wondering, was this before they became, I guess, invaded and captured?
Yep.
So was there a threat? Like, was there a threat, or are they just operating out of fear at this point? Like, what was the reason that they began making these treaties? Was it that they felt like they were going to get invaded, or was it that they actually had some conflict and was trying to resolve the conflict?
Yeah, no, it's complicated. So again, we're studying the prophets, but if we was to read 1 Kings, 2 Kings, 1 Chronicles, 2 Chronicles, we would see it from the vantage point of the kings. Okay. So we've been talking about the prophets and the prophets' role, but from the vantage point of the kings, remember, Israel is being seduced by these foreign empires because they want to be like them. They're seeing them big and bad, and they're saying, all right, I like how that is, just like the felon of the United States wants to be like Russia, He see, I want to be a dictator. I want to be like them. And so they're seeing these surrounding empires much larger than they are, having greater resources than they have. And so they're being seduced by them. And so that's why these foreign gods are being embraced by Israel. That's why they are making these trade alliances with these foreign nations, because in many ways it's just them being seduced by something they feel like is better than what they really have. And that's how we get, y'all. God provides. That's why all the language God is saying, didn't I bring you out of Egypt? Didn't I feed you in the wilderness? Didn't I bring you over the Jordan River? Why are you now turning away from me, being seduced by these people who ain't did nothing for you? Like, why are you leaving me, right? And so the prophets are continuously warning them, like, yo, get back to the worship of God and God alone. Get back to your loyalties with Yahweh and Yahweh alone. And so because, again, they weren't heeding that, they had these evil kings who were not heeding it, and the people were, they were liking what they were seeing on the other side. They got. And I remember there was an analogy that my friend told me way back when, and it was talking about like relationship life. And he was like, you know, how sometimes, what do they call it? The monkey bar syndrome, that you hold on to your one relationship until you can find the next bar to catch on to. And you may have never heard of it, but I'm sure you know something about it. And he told this analogy about a dog with a bone in his mouth who goes to the river. And the dog looks in the water, and the bone in the water seems to be bigger than the bone that he has in his mouth. So the dog throws the bone out of his mouth to get the bone in the river, only to find there wasn't no bone there. Well, that's what's happening to Israel. They're going to the water thinking that the bone that Syria has to offer is bigger than the one they already have, the God that they already have, and they're dismissing the God they already have for something that's not real. Wow. It's not real. So this is the context in which Isaiah is prophesying, and these kind of foreign arrangements is what he is speaking to. And so, again, while Micah was more so concerned about the economic reality that these farmers are being taken advantage of, their lands are being co-opted, Isaiah is more so concerned about these foreign alliances that are being made for war purposes, that here you are making these covenants and vassal treaties with these foreign nations to your own detriment. So let's get into the book a bit. So while the other 8th century prophets did not have a call narrative, which again is like, how did God call them? Isaiah does. Again, being a major prophet, Isaiah does indeed have a call narrative. And so let's go there. And we're going to find that in Isaiah chapter number 6. This is what got me in trouble with y'all a few months ago when I remixed this verse. And people were not happy about it. Again, Isaiah chapter 6. All right, when you get there, this is Isaiah's call narrative. Now, let me say that obviously this is chapter number 6. So there has been 5 chapters that have preceded this that are prophecies, right? So again, the book is a very kind of out of place book, you know, that you really got to sit and study and go through it to not get lost. But we'll start here and then go back, to pick up chapters 1 through 5. But again, it says, in the year that King Uzzah died, I saw the Lord sitting on a throne, high and lofty. Some of y'all translate might say high and lifted up. And the hem of his robe filled the temple. Seraphs were in attendance above him. Each had 6 wings. With 2, they covered their faces, and with 2, they covered their feet, and with 2, they flew. And one called to another and said, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory. It says, the pivots on the threshold shook at the voices of those who called, and the house filled with smoke. And said, woe is me. And I said, this is Isaiah. And I said, woe is me. I am lost, for I am a man of unclean lips, and I live among a people of unclean lips. Yet my eyes have seen the King, the Lord of hosts. It says, then one of the seraphs flew to me, holding a live coal that had been taken from the altar with a pair of tongues. The seraph touched my mouth with it and said, now that this has touched your lips, your guilt has departed, and your sin is blotted out. Then I heard the voice of the Lord saying, whom shall I send? And who will go for us? And I said, here I am, send me. And he said, go and say to this people, keep listening, but do not comprehend. Keep looking, but do not understand. Make the mind of this people dull and stop their ears and shut their eyes so that they may look with their eyes and listen, so they may not look with their eyes and listen with their ears and comprehend with their minds and turn and be healed. Then I said, how long, O Lord? And he said, until cities lie waste without inhabitant, and houses without people, and the land is utterly desolate, until the Lord sends everyone far away, and vast is the emptiness in the midst of the land. Even if a 10th part remain in it, it will be burned again. And the terebinth and the oak whose stump remains standing, when it is felled, the holy seed of its stump. Okay, so this is Isaiah's call. This is him saying how he received his commission to be a prophet of God. And it started in the year that Uzzah died, and he had this vision, and his vision was the Lord in his temple, and it is to suggest that God was too big to be contained. That's what all of this imagery is suggesting, that he filled it in his, no, he didn't feel it, the train filled it, just his train, as the New Revised Standard, his hymn, just the little hymn part filled it to let you know just how magnanimous he was. Yep.
So that's when other didn't carry the ark, like he said, of the covenant.
Oh, that's a different Uzzah.
Oh, that's a different.
Yeah, that's a different Uzzah. Yep. Yeah. So this is the sign. And then Isaiah, again, is admitting to his own impurity. He's like, look, I don't even feel worthy. Like, the sight that I'm seeing is making me recognize my own unworthiness to see this. But it is the seraph who takes this hot coal and basically burns his lips, purifying him and making him consecrated for his role of prophecy. And then look what his prophecy is. His prophecy is basically God telling him, harden the hearts of the people. Like, don't help them. Push them in their ignorance. Keep them doing what they're doing. And he says, how long you want me to do that? He says, until all the cities are destroyed and the inhabitants are gone. So basically saying, don't save them. Let them deal with what they've been trying to get all along. They gonna finally get it. You've been asking for it, and I'm gonna provide it to you. And again, this is his first prophecy. So again, we can really kind of encapsulate Isaiah's whole mission and ministry from this chapter number 6. Now again, this makes him unique because again, according to in relationship to the other 8th century prophets, he is the only one who has a call narrative, okay? Now, again, because Isaiah is a major prophet, which again is just because of the length of the size of his book, I can't walk through it like I have the minor prophets, which, don't have as many chapters. So I just want to kind of provide a survey, and then you all can, in your own time, dig deep for what it is that you want to engage. So let me just give you a quick kind of outline. So chapters 1 through chapters 12 is Isaiah prophesying judgment and hope for Judah. Okay, so we'll find that again, this is a unique, well, not unique, it is a consistent theme in Isaiah. That is judgment and hope. There are a lot of prophecies of restoration that comes after prophecies of judgment, okay? So you got, again, 1 through 12 for the judgment and hope for Judah. Now, if I was to break that down, so make that like the big title, and then under that, these 2 bullet points. So from chapters 1 through chapter 6, you have Isaiah prophesying the judgment for Judah's sins. Okay, from 1 through 6 is judgment for Judah's sins. Then from chapter 7 to chapters 12, it is Isaiah prophesying concerning political threats. Okay, so again, remember, this is the backdrop, this Sarah-Ephraimite war, and so the political threats are what is going to happen when Israel tries to take over Judah, or when Assyria comes in. So these are the threats that he is mentioning from 7 through 12. All right. So that's the first section. Then the second section would be judgment and hopes for the nations. Okay, so if he starts off by just talking about Judah in 13 through 27, okay, chapters 13 through chapter 27, he's giving judgment and hope for the nations. And again, it follows the kind of the same. So under there, that's a big one. Give 2 bullet points under there, which is judgments. That goes from chapter 13 to chapter 23. These are judgments that he gives. And let me see if I can just quickly give you some of those. So he gives judgments against Babylon, against Assyria, against Philistia, against the Moabs, against the Damascus, Cush, Egypt, Babylon again, Edom, Arabia. So all of these, so I didn't like detail the map, but like these are little nations that are like here against the coast, here against the coast, around here. So he basically tags everybody who's anywhere near. There are judgments that are against them from chapters 13 through chapter 23. And
Warning them about invading Judah?
they all got kind of different stuff, but basically it's all God's displeasure with how they're handling themselves. All right, and then from chapter 24 to chapter 27, again, that's another small bullet point under the judgment and hope for the nations, is judgment and the promise for the future. Okay, and again, that's chapter 24 through 27. So you have like God's judgment on earth is 24. Then the praise to a victorious God is chapter 25. A song of salvation, chapter 26. The Lord's vineyard, chapter 27. So there's a little more optimistic part in that second bullet point. All right. So 13 through 27 is judgment and hope for the nations. And then judgments 13 through 23 is a list of a bunch of them. Again, I would just sped through them. But again, Babylon, Assyria, Philistia, Moab, Damascus, Cush, Egypt, Edom, Arabia, and Tyre. All right. Then the next big category would be what's called the woes. Okay. And it's a bunch of woes too. And that goes from chapter 28 to chapter 33. Chapter 28 to chapter 33. And some of those are woes to Ephraim, which again is northern kingdom. Woes to David's city, which again is the southern kingdom. Woes to foreign alliances. That again is the vassal treaties that they're making with these foreign nations. Woes to rebellious children. That's how God sees Israel. Woes to their reliance on Egypt. And then woes to Assyria. And again, when you all tune in to Bible study tonight, or when they post the PowerPoint, you all have these in there. All right. Then you have the next big category would be the nations of Judah. Yep.
There's a question online.
Okay.
It says, so chapters 1 through 12 were not judgment?
Yeah, so chapters 1 through 12 are judgments and hope for Judah. And that breaks down from judgments of sins from 1 through 6, and then prophecies concerning political threats from 7 through 12. But again, the PowerPoint will be coming. They can get that breakdown. All right, and then the nation of Judah from Assyria, that's chapters 36 through 39. And remember, I'm stopping at 39 because that is the 8th century role of this prophet, okay? This is all during the pre-exilic period, although we know Isaiah goes to, has 66 chapters in it.
Say 34 again.
Right, it was 34.
And 30, yeah.
Yeah, so those are in between larger categories, so I don't have them under any of those, but 34 and 35 are conclusions of the judgment and hope. Okay. So they kind of wrap up the from 13 through 36. So from the judgment and hope of the nations and the woes, it's kind of like a concluding chapter, 34 and 35. Okay, and then that last one was it 36 to 39, and then here are the subcategories there. You have Judah is saved from the Assyrians. All right, that's chapters 36 to chapter 37, verse 38. That's Judah being saved from the Assyrians. Then you have Hezekiah's illness and recovery. That's chapter 38. And then you have Hezekiah's error, his mistake. And that's chapter 39. His mistake was he showed Babylon just how rich he was. All right. So again, that's the kind of outline of the what is known as First Isaiah, chapters 1 through 39. Now, in the few minutes that we have remaining, I want to focus on this. Okay, so again, Isaiah is a very unique prophet, major prophet because of the size of his book, a unique prophet because, you know, some have debates on whether or not the book is broken up into 3 parts or 2 parts. But some have called the book of Isaiah the 5th gospel. All right, they call Isaiah the 5th gospel. Can anybody guess why they might call the book of Isaiah the 5th gospel? Yep.
Because he prophesied about Jesus.
Yeah, because he has so many prophecies in the book of Isaiah about the coming Messiah. Okay, so I want to look at a few of those quickly. So again, since we're only dealing with First Isaiah, I'm going to stop at the references that only fall between 1 and 39. But there are some other references that are from 40 to 66, like Isaiah 42 and 1, the suffering servant, Isaiah 49 and 6, the universal savior, Isaiah 53 and 3, the suffering redeemer, and Isaiah 53 and 11, the righteous servant. All of these kind of point to the coming Messiah, but they are outside of the first Isaiah, the ones that are from 1 to 39. So let's quickly do these. So I need 4 volunteers. I need 1 person to get Isaiah 4 and 2. I need another person to get Isaiah 7, chapter 7, verses 10 through 16. 1 person to get Isaiah chapter 9, verses 1 through 7. And then the last person to get Isaiah chapter 11, verses 1 through 16. So Isaiah 4 and 2. Okay, you got 4 and 2. 7. Okay, 7 and 10. 9. You got 9. And then who has 11? Okay, 11. Okay, let's start with Isaiah 4 and 2.
On that day, the branch of the Lord shall be beautiful and glorious, and the fruit of the land shall be the pride and glory of the survivors of Israel. And that's the New Revised Standard Version.
Yeah, and I apologize to our streaming. Maybe I could just pass this microphone around so you all can hear the people who are reading the text. But again, this one is a very just short reference to a potential prophecy of the coming Messiah. Anybody can guess where you see it? Where do you see Jesus potentially being prophesied about? Yep, the branch, okay? When it says the day of the branch of the Lord, this is suggested that this could be a foreshadowing of Jesus as he comes from the branch of God, okay? But again, that's a small one. There are actually some scholars that debate that one because they suggest that that branch could actually just mean the remnant of Israel, so all the people who will come back after captivity, and not just Jesus alone, but some do see Jesus in that phrase of the branch of the Lord, okay? Isaiah 7, go ahead down.
Again, the Lord spoke to Ahaz.
Yeah, keep going.
Ask the Lord your God for a sign, whether in the deepest depths or in the highest heights. But Ahaz said, I will not ask, I will not put the Lord to the test. Then Isaiah said, Hear now, you house of David, is it not enough to try the patience of humans? Will you try the patience of my God also? Therefore, the Lord himself will give you a sign. The virgin will conceive and give birth to a son, and will call him Emmanuel. He will be eating curds and honey and when he knows enough to reject the wrong and choose the right. For before the boy knows enough to reject the wrong and choose the right, the land of the two kings you dread will be laid waste.
Okay, that's enough there, because y'all saw where it was, right? When it says, and the virgin shall conceive, and they shall call him Emmanuel, okay? And so again, that is another foreshadowing of the potential of the coming Messiah. Now we have Isaiah 9, 1 through 7.
Nevertheless, there will be no more gloom for those who were in distress. In the past, he humbled the land of Zebulun and the land of Naphtali. But in the future, he will honor Galilee of the nations by the way of the sea beyond the Jordan. The people walking in darkness have seen a great light. On those living in the land of the deep darkness, a light has dawned. You have enlarged the nation and increased their joy. They rejoice before you as people rejoice at the harvest, as warriors rejoice when dividing the plunder. For as in the day of Midian's defeat, you have shattered the yoke that burdens them, the bar across their shoulders, the rod of their oppressor. Every warrior's boot used in battle and every garment rolled in blood will be destined for burning, will be fuel for the fire. For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful, Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Of the greatness of his government and peace there will be no end. He will reign on David's throne and over his kingdom, establishing and upholding it with justice and righteousness from that time on and forever. The zeal of the Lord Almighty will accomplish this.
Okay. All right, so y'all see that? Again, that is a sign of the coming Messiah, that he be the Prince of Peace, the Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, and Prince of Peace. And then who has the last one here?
A shoot shall come out of the stump of Jesse, and a branch shall grow out of his roots. The Spirit of the Lord shall rest on him, the Spirit of wisdom and understanding, the Spirit of counsel and might, the Spirit of knowledge and the fear of the Lord. His delight shall be in the fear of the Lord. He shall not judge by what his eyes see or decide by what his ears hear, but with righteousness he shall judge the poor and decide the equity of the meek of the earth. He shall strike the earth with the rod of his mouth, and with the breath of his lips he shall kill the wicked. Righteousness shall be the belt around his waist, and faithfulness the belt around his loins. The wolf shall live with the lamb. The shepherd shall lie down with the kid. The leopard shall lie down with the kid. The calf and the lion and the fatling together, and the little child shall lead them. The cow and the bear shall graze, and their young shall lie down together. And the lion shall eat straw like an ox. The nursing child shall play over the hole of the asp, and the weaned child shall put its hand on the adder's den. They will not hurt or destroy on all my holy mountain, for the earth will be full of the knowledge of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. On that day, the root of Jesse shall stand as a signal to the peoples. The nations shall inquire of him, and his dwelling shall be glorious.
All right, so y'all see that there, Jesus as, what does it say? The shoot that shall come out of the stump of Jesse and his branch. And then in verse 10, the root of Jesse. And then what is that? And the little child shall lead them. All of these things are pointing to the coming Messiah. And so again, because Isaiah does so much in setting the groundwork for Jesus' coming, and we know what the gospel is about the life of Jesus Christ. Because Isaiah sets so much of that up, again, some refer to him as the fifth gospel. All right, we've run out of time, but there's one other thing that I want us to look at, which is, I've told you all that from Isaiah 13 through 23, he's giving all these prophecies against foreign nations. Well, we know that we're in the pre-exilic period still, so Jerusalem has not yet been captured by Babylon, but because we're Bible readers, we know that they will. They will be captured by Babylon, and we also know that they will be delivered out of their captivity for Babylon, and Isaiah prophesied this. We find this beginning in Isaiah chapter number 13, when he prophesied about Babylonians' destruction, particularly verse number 19. So again, Isaiah 13 and 19, and it says, "In Babylon, the glory of its kingdom and the splendor and pride of the Chaldeans will be like Sodom and Gomorrah when God overthrows them." And we know what Sodom and Gomorrah was. He destroyed every bit of that land because he couldn't find not one righteous who was among them. And so it said that Babylon will be just like that. And if we would have read a couple of verses before, Isaiah actually says exactly how they will be destroyed. He talks about the Medes and the Persians. Well, we know that is recorded in Daniel chapter 5, where Daniel then records the fulfillment of that prophecy when Babylon was conquered by the Medes and the Persians. So again, Isaiah is a major prophet in the Bible, primarily because of the size of his book, but because he talks so much about Jesus, he again has a special role and significance in connecting the Old Testament to the New, in marking the coming of the Messiah. So again, I encourage you all to take some time and just sit with chapters 1 through 39, okay? Try not to confuse yourself right now. We'll get to the other ones when we get to the exilic period and the post-exilic period, but 1 through 39, do some reading there, but again, you'll see what Isaiah's contribution has been as a power player in the Bible. Any questions or comments? Again, for those who are streaming, again, thank you for joining us at noon. You, again, can sow a seed to our Bible2Life ministries, whether that's through Givelify, Cash App, or PayPal. And again, we encourage you to do so we can continue to build on this platform. We've started late a couple of times trying to get the camera to work. Well, the more you give, the more we can provide some small stipend for those who are able to make this happen. So again, when we say it allows us to expand what we do, we truly do mean that. And again, if there are any who would like a little more, you can come back again at 7:00 p.m. On our Facebook and YouTube page. Any questions in the room? If not, again, well, we have concluded the 8th century prophets, and we are on our way to captivity. That's nothing to be happy about, but we on our way, to see what the prophets during the time of exile are saying. So let's now conclude with a word of prayer. God, in Jesus' name, we thank you for what we have shared. God, I pray that this lesson has come through with some clarity, that your students might have something to grab onto to further their study and curiosity of your word. God, we pray that you're pleased by our time of sharing today. And God, that we have planted the seed, but we trust you to provide the increase. And so we thank you for what you have revealed to us in today's lesson. And now, God, we ask for your continued protection as we go to our separate destinations, that we might have traveling mercies until we gather together again. It's in Jesus' name we pray and give thanks. Amen.